Hi, this is Priyanka here. Jean, are we expecting more students to join? Hello. Deepti, Um,
I
Hi. When do we start?
Um, okay. Usually, I don't think we can expect a lot of students
Okay. Okay.
on a Friday class.
Okay, cool.
They should, but they don't.
Is attendance not mandatory?
This was the number
So
in the
actually, it's
earlier class as well. So I think you should
I
go ahead.
sure,
excuse
sure.
me.
Okay. Anubhav has a question. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What are we going to do today?
So the thing is, first we'll have a show of hands from the students, all of you, telling us whether you've gone through the introductory lecture that was put up on the course website, the this Lab 4 website. Okay. So I can only see three hands right now. Are you sure? No, no, no. I think I've asked for a show of hands for whoever has watched the video. Cool. So it looks like about 40% have gone through it. Okay, so I mean, given that there's a majority that hasn't gone through the video yet, what we'll probably do is, briefly go through the introductory lecture. If you have any doubts, you can always go back to it's about a 22-minute lecture that we've put up on the course website. So feel free to go through that at your not leisure. It was leisure when we had sent it to you guys around, I think, 16th of December. But now, since your lab is starting, you're going to be giving your quizzes starting Monday. It would be advisable to first either listen to the introductory lecture here or go through it um, at the course website. After that, you would be expected to go through the six very very short demo videos that we've put up on the course website, and then carry on with your task. Again, maybe have another show of hands for how many have been able to do the tasks.
Ma'am, I had a small
Priyanka's
error.
hand. Yes, but tell me. Yes,
No,
Rashi,
ma'am.
tell me. Yes.
Yeah, actually, I had a small error during the like the installation part, etc. worked, but for
Mhm.
some reason, even though the module has been downloaded and the
Mhm.
add-on has been downloaded, I do not know why it's still showing some error. So, will it be possible for me to share screen and just show the error once, or
So
if
we'll do
possible?
this at the end of once we are done with the lecture,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
then we'll take up these questions.
towards the end. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Sure. Yes, that sounds good. We can actually clarify all doubts here, and feel free to contact us even otherwise. We'll go through that, Rashi. All right, so maybe we'll go through the introductory lecture briefly. And okay, so this is your lab 4, which deals primarily with cognition. And in your previous labs, uh, you had, gone into some detail about the molecules, neurons, and networks that are involved in decision making or cognition per se. Right? In this particular module or lab, we will be concentrating more on how behavior lets us understand about what goes on in the brain, right? So we are at the opposite end of the spectrum. So, what can behavior tell us about what the brain is doing? Now, typically in a laboratory setup, we have people come in and do behavioral tasks. Now, these tasks are done in a controlled environment, and we can analyze these tasks in terms of accuracy, that is, how correctly you're able to discern, say, one object from the other. You can That depends on the aim of your task. And you can also additionally look at reaction time measures. Now, what is reaction? That is, give a response until you actually give a response. Right now, these behavioral measures help us understand something about how the brain is working. So, in the graph at the center here, you can either look at accuracy and reaction time as a function of what, right? So, what goes on the x-axis? So, think about that. So, one of the cognitive phenomenon is visual attention. I'll just very briefly read out what this says here. How do we define visual attention? So all of us know what attention is, right? How many times, on end we heard our teacher say, pay attention in class, pay attention to detail, pay attention to your handwriting or whatnot. So what is visual attention? Now, everyone knows what attention is. It is the taking possession by the mind in clear and vivid form of one of what seem several simultaneously possible objects or trains of thought. Focalization, concentration of consciousness are of its essence. It implies withdrawal from some things in order to deal effectively with others. So, why is attention important? At any time, we are getting an amazing amount of information to our eyes, right? But are we processing every bit of it with the same, say, accuracy or detail at the same time? Not really, right? So we pay attention, or one way of selecting from this cluttered visual environment is moving your eyes. So wherever we want to look clearly or pass information from clearly, we move our eyes. Now the other way is directing your attention towards particular objects in space. Now here, if I ask you to pay attention to the yellow ducks, wouldn't you? Am I being heard now? Right, I think I lost connection for a little bit. Now, if I ask you to pay attention to yellow ducks here, can somebody tell me where these ducks are? You can feel free to unmute yourself.
There are two close to the center of the image. There's one close to the top of the shelf, and there are two behind the plant on the right-hand side.
Correct, right. Right now, at the outset, wasn't this a little difficult? But when I asked you to look out for certain objects in space, you were almost immediately able to locate these in your visual environment, no matter how cluttered it was. So this is a form of visual search. As Abhipsa rightly pointed out, you have these small toy ducklings around here. So just, to get you guys a little bit more involved in this, how many of you have actually, done or played Where's Waldo? So I see two hands here. Or three. Okay, four. Awesome. So all of you have, you guys are familiar with, this has become very mainstream. But you'll realize that this is really a form of visual search. Now, so for anybody who is not familiar, this is Waldo. All right. So now your task is to look out for Waldo in this particular scene. This is from pre-COVID era, clearly, because you have no idea of social distancing. So raise your hand when you point it. Okay, Nikita.
Yeah, he is near the red white towel. Can you see
Red,
that
white
in the
towel?
center
Yeah.
of the image?
Yes. Okay, we'll give the others just like a little bit more time to figure him out. Even after your hint, if they do not. Okay, so as Nikita rightly pointed out, there's Waldo. Now let's make this slightly tougher. Where's Waldo here? Clearly, we are all taking a little bit more time, right? Okay, Abhipsa and Nikita are ready. So we'll give somebody else. Karthik. Okay, Karthik, go ahead.
The bottom left, you can see someone with a red and white stripe near the green shirt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's also something in what Karthik just said. When you're looking out for Waldo in such a scenario, you're looking out for particular characteristics, right? So you're looking out for white and red stripes. You're looking out for that beanie of his. You're looking out for those round spectacles or his stick. So, as Karthik mentioned, there is Waldo. How about here? Okay, we'll come to the answer later. The idea here is, as you're seeing that with some increase in set size here, with the increase in number of distractors here, there is a clear increase in the difficulty of your visual search, in how much time you're taking to do that search. So what are the properties of visual search? We know that we are not superhumans, right? We have limitations in our cognitive information processing abilities. And one of the points of visual search is to be able to filter out unwanted information and pay attention to the relevant information. In the examples that you just saw, we were filtering out unwanted information. We did not want to look out for non-Waldos. We wanted to look out for Waldo. And this, some of these cognitive phenomena can be studied with visual search. We'll come to those. And as I've just mentioned, what is important here is there are targets and there are distractors. They could be, as in the duckling case, they could be multiple targets and multiple distractors, or a single target among many distractors. And we'll also look at how our ability to perform this visual search changes as a function of how many distractors there are. Okay, some of you might have already done this task if you've gone through the lecture, but let's look for bean in this next image set. Cool, everybody look at this fixation cross right at the center. Okay, cool. How many found bean? Cool, Anubhav. I expect a lot of hands to go up for this. Anubhav, tell me where.
So just below the cross on the left.
Correct, right? So we saw that this was a super easy task to do, even though our distractors were all, semantically Bean, but they don't look anything like Mr. Bean. So it was a very easy task to do. It was almost like Mr. Bean popped out, right? Now we'll do another task. Again, the idea is to look for Bean. All of you look at the center cross here. Cool. Now how many of you were able to find Mr. Bean? Good. That's actually more than I expected. Awesome. Right. So we have Mr. Bean right here, which is in the central row in the fifth column. Now, but wasn't this a slightly more difficult task to do? And why do you think that might be? Any particular thoughts from any of you? Yes, Abhib.
In the previous case, there were still some differences, as in we could see that the shape of the object being presented or the color was like vastly different. But over here, all of the faces, like the same features are present, so it's more difficult to differentiate and for it to pop out and for us to find it.
Very good, Abhipsa. So the idea here is this reaction time of yours also dependent on how similar your distractors were to your target, right? As Abhipsa mentioned previously, they were very different in some features, but here all of them are faces. So that leads to some difficulty in searching. Right. So
Hi, I had a question. Do you
Yes,
want us to
Nikita?
wait till the end or can I ask right now?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry about the interruption. So in this
No,
figure,
please feel
do
free
you
to.
think the
Yes.
reaction time is greater because of the fact that we did a previous example, like a similar example where the beans or the distractors were used are totally different
I
than the
can't hear you
distractors used
right now.
here? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Yes, tell me.
Yeah, I was asking whether do you think the reaction time would differ or basically would it decrease if this was the first experiment we did? Like previously, we first used the beans as the distractor, right? And there, as Abhipsha and you mentioned previously, there's like a lot of difference, color, shape, and everything. And here it's faces. Because we did that task first and we're again looking for the same stimuli, do you think our reaction time increased as compared to if we just did this task first?
So that's a good point. Right now, I don't think there's a very clear answer for it whether it will increase or it will decrease. Now, one argument towards saying that it might decrease is that you are learning to, right? The first time it was a very novel stimulus for you, but the second time it's not that novel a task either, right? So there is some amount of learning that is happening. But I guess what you're pointing towards is what we are expecting, right? In the first one, after doing the
Yeah,
first
after
one,
seeing the
you were
first one.
expecting something else, or at least not this. So that is a possibility. So there is a violation of expectation there, and that, in essence, in principle, can actually increase your reaction time. So that is a fair point. If you were to actually do this in a lab, you have many trials, all right? So there is also an amount of fatigue that comes in. So that can again increase your reaction time. So that's a very valid point that you're bringing out, that there are many factors, right, that could actually lead to this increase in reaction time that we're talking about. And so, I mean, good that you're thinking on lines of what other things could affect reaction times. So you're absolutely right in that sense. But the primary factor, though, driving your increase in reaction time is the feature similarity with distractors and targets here, right? Because otherwise, it's a fairly simple task to do.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anytime. And yes, feel free to interrupt any of us anytime. Yeah. So, so what can pop out, right? What tells you if a search is parallel? So, when an observer looks at a field, right, of similar in the sense of they're all objects, right, but one of them simply pops out because it is very dissimilar from the rest of the objects there, or the distractors. So there what is happening is that particular object is actually drawing your attention towards it, in as we saw of the face of Mr. Bean among beans, or a bean bag, or Jack and his beanstalk, right? That was Jack, right? So you see that it was popping out. It drew your attention towards that particular object. So this is a bottom up processing, and why we are calling it bottom up is because it is the stimulus that is driving how you're attending to that stimulus. So now these, for such kind of searches, the visual system can detect these kind of properties in parallel, right? In the sense, at one go, you can process all the information that you have, and you can indicate which the target was. So here, the number of distractors do not matter. What we mean by that is this. Now, suppose this is your similar set. So what is the target here? It's So what is the target here? Target is something that is describing what is dissimilar with the distractors, right? So in orientation, even though all of them are of the same color, we see that one of the bars is horizontally oriented, whereas the others are vertically oriented. Now, if I were to increase your set size, and here I increase your set size, what are the distractors here? They are the vertical bars, right? Now, you know was it not easy to detect the target even now? And again, right? So it just drew your attention, it popped out. You do not have to go through all of the distractors to indicate what the target was. Yes, Nile, was there a
But
question?
yes, ma'am. But
Yes.
but uh, won't it depend on what the distractor is? For example, if you've seen some of those puzzles where there's a matrix of smiling faces and there's one sad face in
Hmm.
between, those are
Correct.
very difficult as compared to something like this.
That is very
Although
true.
the
Hmm.
distractor is very similar to the object you're trying to identify in this case as well. So why is that difference? How do you decide if a distractor is distinct enough to allow a, a parallel
Something to
search?
pop up, right? So, I mean, that's a fair point. So, even here, now suppose instead of a horizontal bar, it was, say, a what not if it was off vertical by 20 degrees, right? Then it would become harder. It wouldn't pop out as much. Here we've gone to like the extreme, right? So it's either vertical or horizontal. So that is kind of defining how dissimilar in orientation your target is from your distractors. But when you're talking about smileys or emojis, right? You have all our circles, all have two eyes. Most of them don't have noses, and they're differing in that one characteristics, whether it's an upward curve or a downward curve. Even in that, it depends on how curved the curve is, right? If I'm making sense here, if it was just above or just curved at the ends versus if it was actually a part of a smaller radius circle. Now that itself is a degree of dissimilarity. Now how do we know, right? One way to do it is actually to do a visual search. And then, as that is actually giving me a good segue into this graph on your bottom left here. If you were to plot the reaction time as a function of the number of items, here really being the distractors, you'll see that the reaction time doesn't differ by very much as a function of the number of items, right? So this is empirical evidence, right? This is behavioral evidence that is showing you that the search is pop out. So if you really want to, actually see whether a pop-out, if it is a pop-out search, you can do a task yourself and then see, oh yes, this is a pop-out. Since uh, the reaction time is remaining comparable across the number of items, and it's actually comparable even across the target present and target absent trials. Yeah, so Nila, does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And you don't have to call me ma'am. Priyanka is fine. Yeah. So we see that this is a pop-out search so here our visual system is working in parallel. So what cannot pop out? Exactly as Nelia was asking, what cannot pop out, right? What tells us if a search is serial? So we see that um, in a sequence of attentional fixations, right? You have an area that is covered, an area of visual space that you are able to process with high either acuity or in high detail, right? So this you are driving your attention in different places in space. There is a top-down control. Now, what we mean by top-down control is that it's an endogenous way of driving your attention. Your brain is telling you, okay, this is where you're supposed to pay attention. So here, what we do is, one by one, we are assessing how whether it is a target or not, right? So you're looking at, you're matching it with the target implicitly, of course, but at each stimulus or object here. Now here, and as would be intuitive, the time required to find the target will depend on how many such comparisons you have done. So here, the number of distractors do matter. In the sense, even in the being among George Clooney and Obama and Sheldon, okay, forgot his name. Anyway, so in that example there, you see if I were to have like 50 faces, right, instead of those few faces, your reaction time is likely to be higher. From a more objective kind of example here, can anybody tell me what the target is here?
The red
horizontal red line.
Correct. Now, how did you come to that conclusion?
Because there's no other figure like that there.
Right. So here we are seeing that the targets and distractors can be similar or rather dissimilar in two features, right? One is orientation and one is color. So it is both that define what a target is. So now if I were to increase your distractors here, it took you just a little bit longer, right? So what is the algorithm that we are using to look out for that target? So suppose I first select the leftmost blue bar here. All right, I do a test for match to target, and as you guys rightly pointed out, it's a red horizontal bar. We say no, it is not a match. So then, is it the last one? No, it isn't. So we move on to the next. Next, we say come to a vertical red bar. We select that, we match for the target, we see it isn't a match. Then we move on to the next and the next and the next until we come to the target, right? Now, once we do reach the target, we know that the target is present. So we can respond, yes, the target is present. Now, what if there was no target in this display here? You would have to go through each and every object that is here and then indicate that there was no target. Right, so now on the left side here, on the bottom left, you see that as a function of the number of items, or the set size, or number of distractors in this particular case, your reaction time is increasing. Now another thing to note here is how these slopes or these graphs that you're seeing are different for target absent versus target present trials. Now, can somebody give me an, like, why do you think this is happening? Why is there this difference? In the previous one, we saw there was no difference between target present and target absent. But now, why are we seeing this difference? Yes, Pranav.
So if the target is absent, I mean, to confirm that it's absent, you need to search the entire visual field and confirm that it is actually absent. But if it's present, it's possible that you terminate your search earlier because you find it. And depending on the position of the target, it might be easier to find.
That is absolutely right. So this becomes a self-terminating search. But in principle, do remember that this search could, or as in the absent case, it becomes an exhaustive search. All right, because you have to exhaust all the number of items that were presented. So yes, so that is a good point. But any search, any serial search could be a self-terminating one or an exhaustive one, depending on what you're looking out for. And we'll come to that in a bit. All right. So that's kind of done from my side. Next, we'll have Sanchit. Yes, question.
So
Sure.
on the previous slide, again, even if the object is present, shouldn't the search still be exhaustive? Because we don't know what the object is. You just told us to identify which is the only one of its kind. But when you encounter something like that, you still have to look at all the other objects to see if there's something like it or not. Otherwise, the first object would be the correct one, right?
No, so it depends on one thing is here we are going with the knowledge that there is only one target that is present. All right. But you're right, if there were multiple targets, say if instead of saying if my question was, if is there a target present, right? You are going to maybe terminate it right when you find the target. Instead, if my question was how many targets are present here, then definitely you will have to do an exhaustive search. So you're right. So suppose there were 3 of these, right? And I've told you what the target is. All right. I've told you that the target is a red horizontal bar. Yeah. So then.
I think that's where my doubt
I think
Yes.
that's
Yes.
what I was also coming to. I think the question you began with was hi, this is Sagarika, by the way.
Yeah. Hi,
That
Huh.
you have to look out for a horizontal red bar. So the question it began was to look for a target. So I mean, Niloy is correct when he said that will it be an exhaustive search when I ask you to look for an odd one out? So you have to like scan the entire visual field and but yeah, because depending on the instruction, you will look out for a particular part, a particular
Right.
feature.
Right. Yes, Karthik?
So with respect to like determining the reaction time, so how does one remove the variability of different candidates starting the search at from different
Different.
points?
So one way to do that, you're right, and one way to do that is having, say, many trials of the same type, and we are more sort of interested here in within subject. All right, how for one particular subject are these particular things differing? But you are right. We can have different strategies, right? For somebody, it might be like a clockwise, it could be left to right, it could be anti-clockwise. So
So
you're
in
right. So
gen
having many subjects and having the target in many different places or having many trials, that sort of extracts that, it sort of controls for that variability. But yes, tell me.
so do you instruct the candidate to start in a particular way, or is it completely up to them?
So also this is, it is completely up to them, and many times there is an external imposition of having the subjects to fixate at a particular central point. So then it becomes like an attentional fixation, but it's still up to the subject or to the participant, how they go about it. But you know it's not defined. I mean, usually, even in the lab, the neuroscience labs we have, we don't actually tell them that this is the strategy you should use. Um, but you're right. Yes, there is inter-subject variability, and that itself could be interesting because there are so maybe you could maybe we can talk offline about this. There are also people who are, say, better at local features versus global features. So that can also tell you something about how you're paying attention. So you're right in the sense that yes, they can be high inter-subject variability.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, Anubhav.
Yeah, it is. My question is not related to this. I just wanted to ask for our assignments. We have to analyze our own reactions, right?
Yes, you have to.
Okay, and are all of the tasks in green and red, the colors?
If they are in green and red, but if you have any trouble, you can let me know and we can talk about it.
Okay, yeah, I was just concerned if everyone would be able to do it.
No, and I was thinking about it too, but you're right. I mean, this is, this been going on and we could have changed it actually. And given that even I had thought of it, I probably we should have. But yes, it's a fair point. So if anybody is having trouble, please do let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about this serial versus parallel processing. Like, how does it translate into the circuitry that goes behind the brain circuitry that goes behind this processing? Like, uh, can we have any idea about the pathways that go on in the brain while processing the two different kinds of targets?
So that's a very good point, and I'm sure this is like an ongoing field of study. Yeah, but so one thing is that there are some slightly different pathways for, you know, depending on where and what kind of pathways in the brain. But I don't think we have extreme clarity on, that this is involved in parallel processing or this is involved in serial processing. Sanchit, would you like to add to that?
Yeah. So we have different kinds of pathways to process like something fast as well as slow. For example, your higher order brain regions, for example, the prefrontal cortex, the parietal cortex, are involved whenever you like apply top-down attention and or like when you know what the target is and you are like basically doing a parallel search. However, whenever like things just pop out, it's mostly from the lower order processes in the brain. For example, like maybe the limbic system and things like that. That's why there is one more interesting thing which we can study, and that is in this parallel searching, we first like come up with an answer and later become conscious of it. So that's why, yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, that's what I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Okay, so it's a good starting for me when we like talked about something conscious and unconscious, and that takes us to the next section, which is priming and memory. So these are both cognitive constructs, and we'll study both of them and what do they mean and how do they apply in day to day in our day to day lives. So let us start by studying priming memory. So memory, we all know what it is: to retain information for some period of time. And why do we retain information? Because it's useful for us to guide future actions. However, to define formally, it is like the faculty of the brain by which information is encoded and retrieved whenever needed. So this is called memory. And now let us do a nice task to gauge our memory capacities. So hope you are all ready. So I'll read out some words as well as they will be displayed on the screen, and you are supposed to like remember those words. And later on, we'll ask whether I'll show you a word and ask whether that word was present or not. All ready, right? Okay, here we go. I see. Uh-huh. The presentation seems doesn't seem to be working. Okay. Okay, just a minute. Uh, okay, leave it. So no problem. So, for example, I would have shown you some words like candy, butter, and many such words which are used in a day-to-day grocery items. And then ask you like whether a particular word, for example, cream, sweet, candy was there or not. And this would have tested your capacity. So the more accurate you were in telling whether that word was there or not, the more your memory capacity was. And through this example, we wanted to study what priming was. For example, I showed you the word sugar in the original set and asked you whether sweet was there or not. Now, on average, we expect that given that you heard the word sugar, and when I ask you was sweet there or not, your mostly answer would be yes. You will feel that yes, I heard something like that, and you will press the yes button. So this is what is called priming, where you were not shown the word sugar, but however you felt that you were shown the word sugar because I asked you to recall something sweet, and what is sweet? Sugar is sweet. So that association forming in the brain is called priming. So this was the original set of words. So as you can see, sugar is there, and given that sugar is there, you would have pressed yes if I would have asked whether sweet was there or not. So to define formally, priming is a cognitive phenomenon whereby exposure to a stimulus influences a response to the subsequent action. For example, in a lexical task, priming occurs when a person's response to a word is influenced by associativity or semantic relationship to a preceding word. For example, we always use the word doctor in respect to a hospital. we say I visited the hospital yesterday to get a regular checkup with my doctor. We don't say I visited the hospital today to get to meet the security guard there. So given that the doctor and the hospital are used like in close associations with each other, this thing whenever I say hospital, you expect the next word to be a doctor or vice versa also. So this is called associations and this is called priming. And this happens unconsciously. So whether you want to make an association between different things or not, this will happen. For example, in this case, what you would be doing in some of the tasks is a kind of visual priming, which occurs when a person responds faster or better to a visual stimulus when it is preceded by a similar stimulus. For example, in the previous visual search task which we just saw, even though the task could have been difficult or easy, irrespective of that, if the target always appear at one location, wouldn't you be faster at it? Wouldn't you be better at responding whenever the target comes at the same location in some subsequent trials? So that is called visual priming, where a target is coming at some like particular visual location, and therefore you are better at detecting the target when it comes at that particular location as compared to some other location. So, and this is again like, as I told you, it's implicit memory. So do we have any questions? I'm sorry the presentation didn't work completely. Okay, good. So next till here we were talking about some implicit memory associations which were resulting in priming. Now let us study what is explicit memory when you explicitly recall certain things. For example, when you study for an exam, and for example, a general knowledge exam, you remember that the capital of this city, this state is this, and so on, things like that. All that comes into explicit memory, and all that is conscious. So, for example, here is a particular experiment called the Sternberg's experiment. So, what is it? It's an item recognition paradigm. So, for example, you will be shown certain letters, certain words, certain numbers, things like that, just like we saw in our example. And later you would be asked to recall, or you will be asked whether a particular letter was present or not. For example, in this case, the subject is being shown A, K, L, and M and is supposed to memorize them. And later, the subject is shown a letter L and asked whether this letter was present or not. So this is called an item recognition paradigm. You are like recognizing an item, whether it was there or not, and giving a response accordingly. And this requires explicit memory. And here we see that the reaction times increases monotonically with set size. So the larger the set size, the larger the words or letters you have to remember, the more time you will take to respond to a question, whether L was present or not. And very interestingly, we see here that the slopes for positive target present and target absent trials is similar. Thereby meaning like irrespective of whether L was present or absent, you will take a similar amount of time. So this implies that it is an exhaustive search, meaning that even if you found the letter L, then also you will continue to search until you exhaust the entire set before giving a response. So, are there any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Why exactly? So if we already match it, wouldn't the person just end the search like for matches? Why does it go on? Why is it exhaustive?
So your intuition is like in the correct direction, and we have to see the model to exactly answer this question. So I'll hold this question for a minute before you go to the model. After that, we can answer it. Is there any other question? Okay. So we'll go to the model. So this is how people explain that this could be happening in the brain for solving a Sternberg's task. So first is called stimulus encoding. For example, you saw in L, you saw some like image pattern on the screen, and you encoded it and said, I have to search for L. Then serial comparison. You will see, you will like save, you will like recall the entire set one by one. Like first you will go to the first word, see whether it's L or not, then to the next word, and so on and so forth. And now, if it's really a simple, and after that, after you have made all the serial comparisons, you take a binary decision. Whether like I have to press yes or no, whether the target was present in the set or whether the target wasn't present. And then you like move your hand, make a motor response and press an appropriate button. So now coming to the question that was asked, the question was, if I find the target, I should give a response as soon as I figure out whether like the target was present or not. For example, if I'm searching for L and if the first word itself is L, shouldn't I just stop my search, go ahead and give my response? So the answer here is that the serial comparison takes very less time. So for, like by some estimates, it is 30 to 35 milliseconds per item. In other words, it means that in a second, you can scan 30 items. So the strategy is to first complete this serial comparison step and then go to the binary step. So we don't take a binary decision after like serial comparison of like first letter, take a binary decision, second letter, take a binary decision, and so on. We first like do a serial comparison across the entire set because it doesn't take much time, and then take one binary decision. And that is why whether irrespective of whether the target was present or whether the target was absent, your reaction times are similar. So does that make sense? Or
So what exactly is like, what do we get out of the serial comparison? Like what exactly happens there?
yeah, so for example, you can think of it in some computer science parlance where you assign zeros and ones. If that, for example, if you are searching for L, and if that letter is L, you apply one there. If it's not there, you apply 0. So your entire set, which will become a combination of zeros and ones. One if at that particular location your target was present, otherwise 0. So that is like serial comparison. We are going to like each and every individual element and doing some comparison and storing it there, not taking a decision. And the decision is you have an array of 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, and you take a or operation of that. Basically sum it. If the sum is 0, you say the target wasn't present. If the sum is 1, you say the target was present.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So are there any more questions? Okay. So we can go ahead with some summary. Okay. So we talked about visual search, visual attention, as well as priming, memory, things like that. And we saw that how reaction time and performance accuracy reflect cognitive processes and can be used to like identify what processes could be happening in the brain while making some decisions. And we studied two types of visual search task, feature search and conjugation search. So feature search in which like one feature, for example, orientation is different between target and distractor. And a conjugation search means when a conjugation of features, one or more features, is different between target and distractors. Then we studied about parallel and serial search models of visual search. So as we studied that reaction time and set size show different characteristics for these kind of searches. In parallel search, it's mostly pop out, so the set size doesn't matter. Your reaction time would be similar across set size. whereas the reaction time varies linearly with set size in serial search model. Next, we studied priming, which is basically the influence of recent trial history on subsequent trials. And we also studied Sternberg's memory recognition task and also studied a memory scanning model which is used to explain decision making during a Sternberg task. So if there are no questions, we'll leave you with some interesting questions, not easy to answer. You can decide amongst yourself, have debates, take sides, and have a good discussion on them. So the question is looking for your friend in a crowd of people a serial search or a parallel search? How is it as a visual search task where you like try to find either, for example, the odd one out, or is it a memory scanning task where you have a template of your friend in mind and then like do a serial comparison? Okay, whether this person is my friend or not. Think about it. Also, one more question: is the behavior of deer spotting a stalking leopard in a grassland an instance of visual pop out, or is it shaped by priming? So, yeah, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, with respect to the Sternberg task, the set of possible things you could be asked to look for, as in the alphabet, that's like limited. But with your first example, with like candy, sweet, bread, and stuff, that would not be. Would it be possible for that to follow the memory scanning, the exhaustive search model, or would that have to be self-limiting?
Mm-hmm.
Because
So,
like the possible things you could be asked is infinite. Like there's too much.
correct. So, so that example didn't work fully. However, we have a limited set of words there, and we showed you, for example, one question word at a time. Sweet, is it there or not? So, uh, mm, I think it would be exhaustive also in this case because the serial comparison step doesn't take much time. So I think like at least most of us on average will first do a serial comparison and then go for a binary answer. So I think like it would be something related to like it will show characteristics similar to a exhaustive search. But am I getting your question correctly or are you asking something else?
Well, it was kind of like So I was thinking along the lines of the example you said, wherein like so suppose you have the whole entire list of alphabets, and in the serial comparison part, like the alphabets that got told to you initially, get assigned the value of 1, say. But that's not possible with the word thing, right? Because there's just so many possible words that you could be told.
So see, we don't tell many words because we know that the memory capacity itself is limited. But if we are giving, if we are keeping the number of words to be within the memory capacity, then I think the same principle should hold. As long as you can like have a template of all the words that you like saw in a task in your memory, if you can keep them, for example, 5 words, 6 words, things like that, which is like easy to keep in memory, you will apply exhaustive search. So the same principles would apply.
Abhipsha, if I may add also, Sanjay, I think it's also like when you're, in what I say, sort of remembering cake, sugar, bake, right? These are objects in themselves in your memory. You're not remembering them as CAKE types. If that was just in case the question that you were asking. So the matching you're doing is whether sugar is equal to cake, whether sugar is equal to sweet, sugar is equal to bake. That's the 0 and 1 that Sanjit was referring to. Here, as you were doing, whether it's L or not, there it's whether you're doing is whether it's sugar or not, or sweet, however that is. I mean, so that itself is one, an object in itself. I'm not sure if that was your question, but just in case that was.
All right. But then in that case, we come back to the initial question of, the one-on-one comparison and that, like, why would it not be self-limiting then?
Self-terminating. So
Self-terminating, sorry.
so just as Sanchit had mentioned too, it just so happens that this process is so quick in your memory, right, given the Sternberg stars. So that is something particular to Sternberg stars. And so so you're observing that, right? So when you have people like us doing the task, this is what you see. So then you go on to try to hypothesize why that might be happening. So one of those models is that you do an exhaustive run through it because it's so quickly, right? So it's just more easy for you to do that comparison at one go and then give your binary response.
All right. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
I think in one of your initial slides, you had a question about what could be on the x-axis, right?
Mhm.
So, I think it was with respect to accuracy and something I forgot.
Reaction time.
Yeah, reaction time. So I was just wondering, like, are you going to have like one of the things that I observed was the number of items that you're going to have. Distractors could be the other thing, and
Correct.
I mean, I was just wondering if like maybe like a delay time or something could also make sense. Like probably if I showed a picture to someone a few seconds before I start evaluating them on the basis of how much they can recognize, that would also play a role, right? Like exposure time
Yes.
rather.
Yes, that could
So
be like the exposure time. You could also have the delay. Suppose you're trying to see how much how much in the past of your memory. Suppose I show you something, I ask you something about that picture, say 1 second later or 2 seconds later or 3 seconds later. That could be in your on your x-axis. It could be something like contrast, right? Contrast of the stimulus that you're showing. That could be on your x-axis. So whatever you want to study it with respect to, you could be. Sanjit, anything else that you would?
yeah, could you add
That's
something
fine.
more on the x-axis? I mean, like
Sure.
how many? Uh,
Sorry.
like as in, could you have something else also on the x-axis, like
Of
rather than
course, yes.
what we just spoke
Yes,
about?
yes. So in the visual search, we are looking at the effect of distractors on the reaction time and accuracy. This is what we are designing. We have designed our tasks to understand these. But it depending on the task that you're designing, you could do it as you like it. So as you were suggesting, right? So if I show you the same image for like 1 second or 2 seconds versus 3 seconds, how is that changing your accuracy and reaction time? So that's a very fair. It depends on what you are trying to study.
Okay, yeah. And I think I had one more question. I think you had mentioned something about present and absent also in one of your question sets, about like which is going to take longer. So it'll be obviously the absent one, right? Because I mean, it has to go through the entire search and it still
Everything.
won't find it.
Correct.
But I had
Because
a
to say that, yeah, yes, tell me.
I had a small query now. When you're saying, let's say I have 300 like items, and in that I do a run where it is present, like single present, and one where there is single absent. I mean, like absent. So in that case, shouldn't both of them take the same time? Because technically you'll be going, like let's say I put the present one in the end, then shouldn't that take a lot of time? It'll be like you're like searching through the entire thing and
That
then
is
going to.
so that you're right. But the thing is that we can actually randomize the position of the target, right? So over trials, suppose you have 10 trials, you would obviously not put it at the end every time. You'll randomize that position, right? So on an average, what you will see is that it is taking longer for absent trials versus the present trials. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Because
sense.
there is no knowledge, right? You're not going into the knowledge that okay, I'm expecting it to be here or there.
Yeah. So basically, it's the averaged out graph, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nikita, you have a question?
Yeah, I also had a question similar to Abhipsha's about the Sternberg experiment, right? I get that like it's gonna take the same amount of time whether it's positive or negative, but I still find it very non-intuitive, because if you were the one typing out a, say, a computer program for this, you would design the function to exit such that if you find a positive response, right? And does this model hold if you increase exposure time?
So your intuition is probably correct only. However, when it come to specifics, I'm okay. Yeah, that's nice. However, when it comes to specifics, it seems like you only need 30 to 35 milliseconds to like scan an item, and that's probably why this process is exhaustive and not like sequential or self-terminating search. And also, I think, although I need to check different papers for this, this comparison step is probably being carried out by some lower order brain regions, and the decision step is being carried out by some higher order brain regions, for example, the prefrontal cortex. Now, given that the scanning step is being carried out by some lower order brain regions, this step is fast. And given that the other step, which is like taking a binary decision, is being carried out by prefrontal cortex, it is slow, just like we discussed. So therefore, it's not at least an energy efficient as well as in time, in terms of timing also. It's not energy efficient also for the brain to like take a serial, like do a decision after each and every serial comparison. Probably, this could be one of the answers. And but yeah, you are correct. For example, if I have to write a code solving a Sternberg's task, I perhaps do that thing only. Yeah, depending on like how much time each comparison takes and take into all those considerations.
And suppose if you observe that two people take, like say one person takes more response time for the same experimental set as another person, what conclusions would you reach based on that?
It's a good question, and we would want you to think more about it. However, like we'll leave you with certain ideas. So,
Like, I was wondering
mhm,
whether one of the factors would be how agile they are. Like, for example, if you're doing the task, once you see it, you actually have to go press the buzzer, right?
mhm.
And if there's some sort of difference or delay associated to that, that will also get reflected. And if we're only interpreting it in terms of their memory, then would that go wrong there?
So the memory part we can address using like the metric by analyzing the metric called accuracy, where we can see okay how much is correct, how much is incorrect. However, the reaction times can give us some idea about, for example, uh, we studied about four steps: the encoding step, the sequential processing or comparison, and then the binary decision, and then response organization, motor response. So depending on like, and each of these four aspects could be different amongst different participants. For example, one person can be slightly slower for comparison, but faster in making a motor response, whereas it could be the other way around for some other person. So the reaction time can't tell us much about memory per se, but the accuracy measure could tell us about memory.
Okay, and another last question. When you have like as many trials as 80 trials, do you think so? If you plot out the accuracy as a function of the order in which these trials happen, would you like be surprised if you notice that the accuracy decreased towards the end solely because the participants start to lose interest?
So yeah, fatigue is certainly a factor, and that's why we keep, especially in our lab has difficult tasks, so we keep the number of trials very limited so that the person doesn't lose focus and is like, we don't want to study this fatigue factor. So that's why we keep a limited number of trials.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, most welcome. So yeah, go ahead. There is some more questions.
Yeah. So with respect to like searching for someone that you know, I wouldn't call it a friend, but let's say this searching for someone you know. So
Mm-hmm.
doesn't it have both like a memory scan and a visual search, because a lot of your memory inputs code for what you're looking out visually. So I don't think it's right to like categorize. I mean, with respect to the last slide that you presented, so the question was like, will it be a, memory scan search or a visual search, right? So I think it should be like a mix of both.
Good answer, yeah. Good. We agree.
And that's again, something in reality. Also, we have a lot of factors at play. They're not working in isolation. So it's in when you're trying to
Exactly.
study the effect of one particular factor. That's why you have tasks in labs like ours, where you're controlling for everything else, but varying only that one particular factor under very controlled conditions. But in a real world scenario, you have a lot of things working in tandem. So you're right that way, that be this and that, and even those factors might be interacting with each other, for all you know. So correct.
Yeah, and also like how Karthik pointed out about so these top-down attentional control where you're looking for a friend. So memory also comes under it.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
memory, your internal goals, some
Yes.
history related with something you saw, which is priming in this case. So,
True. Very
so
true.
So
all of
how
these
does
come
one
under the
remove
umbrella of.
such personal bias while carrying out an experiment which is to be, like published in a paper, or, provide general information
So
to
one way
public?
is that we use very simple. Sorry, I missed a part of your question, I believe, but I'll tell you what we do. So we use very simple visual stimuli. All right. This is coming from a little bit more, I mean, sterner point of view in terms of how do you conduct experiments. You don't want those biases to come in, right? So one way is using just orientations as your stimuli. So orientations are known to be one of the very basic um, things that are analyzed by your visual system, right? So it's very low level features are there.
So at one point we need to move beyond just orientations and color differences, right? So when will that, step happen?
So that happens. So there are, I think, different studies. That's what it depends on what you're trying to study. But a very fair point that you're bringing out is how transferable is, say, the knowledge that is obtained by using very simple stimuli. How transferable is it to translatable? I mean, how applicable is it to a real world scenario? So
Exactly.
there are tasks again, or like studies rather, that deal with even um, natural viewing. Some studies use very natural stimuli. So, like in Sagrika's lab, they are very natural stimuli. Sagrika, you could always, I mean, you could elaborate on that too. So, it really depends on what you're trying to study. But there are those free viewing tasks with real world stimuli.
Okay, thank
Also,
you. Yeah.
just out of curiosity, I'm sure like every lab does everything with proper ethics and all, but despite that, just based on different groups, like different test sample, like test groups and their background, their training, how reproducible are results? For example, if you take a result performed based only on say IISc students and then take that out to general public or like across continents, how well does that hold?
You're talking about a very important point. This is for science as a whole, and especially behavioral science, because that is where you have chances of bias sampling. So there is actually some, what do I forget, I think it's called weird. I'll probably come back to you regarding that. So that's a very fair point that you're uh,
Also,
making.
why do you pay your
Also,
candidates to, be a part of the experiments?
so that's we call it compensation for their time. It's not really, unless you're trying to study the effects of reward, which is one of the tasks in our lab, one of the studies that is ongoing in our lab. You're not paying them for doing the task, but for you're compensating them for the time. So that shouldn't be your the idea is not paying for doing the task.
And also, it's just to like promote a general motivation so that they're not just wasting their time or just like waiting away all the time. It's just a token of appreciation for their efforts. Not everybody wants to like do it for science. So, yeah.
Sure, definitely.
Eh, but I'm very happy some of you brought out very like relevant points and issues. So very good that you're thinking on these lines.
Also, coming back to that question, one of you asked when they were talking about how well the task does when you are just looking at the population in IIC and looking at the population outside. Sometimes it is difficult. I recently started doing some online task with people outside IIC, and it is difficult to not care for those biases that come along with it. You would find those if there are two different suppose age groups or two different places, demographics, all other things do matter.
So,
Also,
like, what is your approach? Sorry, Karthik.
no, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
You try to not add any biases from your side, and try to have suppose if you're looking at a specific age group, then you would just look at that age group, not uh, take a person from outside that age group maybe, or you would try to be as stringent as you are on the instructions, I guess, so that you don't bias them with your instructions or by your ways of conducting the experiments from one subject to other. Uh, the biases that comes around with the people, that I'm not sure if we can control of. What do you guys think, Sanchit, Priyanka?
Uh, yeah, just to add to that point. So, for example, see, I took some IAC subjects and ran some experiment and got some results. So, how do I know whether it's only applicable to IAC students or is it a worldwide phenomena, behavioral phenomena? So, I have to ask this question whether the previous researchers which asked a similar question, are they in line, are my results in line with them? Because I can't get like some opposite results to what these people already showed. So as long as my results are in line or explainable by whatever these people got, I think it's not a matter of much worry for me that, or it is less likely to be a bias sampling. However, like if my results like turn something upside down, then I certainly need to like run more subjects from diverse backgrounds to check what exactly is happening. So this consistency across like results when is one indirect way through which we can like ideally check about the validity of our results.
Oh, okay. But like, won't labs all around the world mostly recruit people from their institution? Or is that not the norm?
I see. So you're saying that something can be.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, neural circuits and all seem like it's not like as for I don't know about this very much, but are they like super standardized from person to person? Because I would expect there to be like variability, right? And
Correct.
if you try to connect that to notions of intelligence or I don't know, higher cognitive ability or something.
Correct. So that's why most of the papers that we see do mention like exactly what was the cohort, how many male participants were there, how many female participants were there, what was their age group, and from where were they recruited from the institute or things like that. And yes, those things can have an effect. And yeah, so you are correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank
Also,
you.
to add to that, you have some of these big databases like Human Connectome Project and things like that, where they have had recruitment from GPA, like general population as such, also. And so again, the demographics will be mentioned as Sanjit mentioned. But again, it's a very fair point, like to discuss in general in science at large. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good questions, everyone.
Actually, I had another question regarding
Yeah.
Sternberg's experiment. So the readings were taken based on like the average reaction times, right? Suppose even if it is a single subject, they would have averaged the reaction time for a particular number of sample size.
Mhm.
So, so based on that, we could propose a like slightly different model. So, suppose I say that there's a serial search going on, but the alphabet. So, suppose you consider 10 alphabets displayed on the screen, and then the subject is asked to whether a particular alphabet was there or not. So, the like in the person's memory, suppose the alphabets are going to get arranged serially, and then he's going to search them one by one. So we could bring about randomness in the order in which the alphabets are being searched for. Suppose the alphabet is A, you're searching for is A, and then in one event of search, that is in one trial, that alphabet is placed at the 10th position while you're searching, and then in another search, it is placed at the 5th position. So if you go in a serial search, you will if to confirm whether the alphabet at the first position is A or not, you take some time T. Then at the fifth position, you'll take if it is at the fifth position in one time, it will take for 5t about 5t time, and for the other one 10t. So as you and then as soon as you find the letter, you make a decision that okay, you've chosen without going after searching for the rest of the letters which are left. So even in that case, if you increase the sample size, the average position at which you're going to find the letter is going to increase, right? So that is also going to give a linear relationship.
So, uh, so what exactly are you asking? Are you asking that why is it exhaustive, or why is it like? See,
I am actually giving I'm thinking of an alternative model to explain the thing without involving a search through all the letters which have.
I see. See, correct. So, so see, why are we calling it self-terminating or exhaustive? Not because the reaction time increases linearly with set size. That will anyhow happen irrespective of whether the search is self-terminating or sequential or like exhaustive. We are calling it an exhaustive search because the reaction time for target present and target absent trials are similar. So, for example, in your case, you are saying when the target is present at the fifth location versus when the target is present at the 10th location, you will have different reaction times. Agreed. In different trials, and when you average, you will get some relationship. Now, think of an example. Let's say you have 10 items, and think of an example where the target wasn't present. What time will you take? Will you take 5t, 2t, or 10t? You will take 10t, right? So when you average across many target absent trials and average across many target present trials, the reaction time for the target absent trials will be much higher as compared to the reaction time for the target absent trials.
Yeah.
So that is why we are calling it exhaustive, not because the relation between set size and reaction time varies linearly.
All right. Yeah, I think I got confused about that. Yeah.
That's fine.
Got it.
That's confusion. Yeah. Yes, Karthik, do you have a question?
Yeah. So how do experiments or like scenarios change when people are dealing with candidates with, like things like personality disorder and anxiety and panic attack and stuff like that?
How do
So do
experiments?
Yeah, yeah. So do some labs in IISc conduct experiments on such topics?
Mm, maybe others can chip in. I don't think any one of us does that.
We have Center for Brain Research actually who do
Ah, right,
interview
right.
participants, and also some projects that work in collaboration, and they work with patients with mild cognitive impairment. So that depends the question you design or the question you ask, the paradigm you design, the questions you ask depends on um, like uh, so. Firstly, here at CNS, mostly all of them are from healthy participants. We get ethics approval to conduct experiments only on healthy participants. And depending on your question, you recruit participants of particular cohort. So if you're looking for something like what happens in a someone who has like a generalized anxiety disorder, so you design a question accordingly, and uh, all your interpretations will be on those participants, on those like cohort of participants. So you don't mix healthy with the with an Alzheimer's patient or anything. But nobody in CNS does that. Only in collaboration work that happens, and that's Center for Brain Research. We did work with Alzheimer's. That's both behavior as well as molecular, by the way.
And again, coming just from that point, you have again these databases like ADNI and RADC, which are big databases with people from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease to normal. So you could still, I mean, those kind of studies do happen at IISc. I mean, not IISc, really in labs like us. But and also there is an ongoing project, as Sakrika mentioned, with Center for Brain Research, where there are efforts to study aging population in India. So, yeah.
So, I mean, um, okay, yeah. Ma'am. Hello.
Hello, yes, sir. Yes, Harish.
Ma'am, while writing the codes for the simulations, means how people start means writing down these codes you- uh, means is there means how means we won't be taught how to write codes for these, but uh, means putting them for a real time scenario seems like it's very much difficult task to do. Means can you tell how means I am actually interested in how coding these scenarios happen.
Right, so there are actually most of the tasks that we use in our lab are MATLAB based, and so there's very good documentation. And we also, as you know, you might have installed yourself Site Toolbox, right? So these are tools that help you design experiments, right? So once you get a hang of it, it's not very difficult. So depending on, you should have a clear idea of what you want to study and how you want to study it. So once you know that, and you
Ma'am,
could always, if you're sorry, just a minute, let me finish. So what I'm saying is, if you're really interested, you can always like intern at some of the labs here and get an idea of how these lab tasks are being conducted and what goes into a code, that is able to bring about these things that are presented on
ma'am,
screen.
are there are there any courses that are offered by the department that teach how to code this kind of stuff?
Uh, there is no particular course that deals with this, but when you're rotating in a lab or you're interning in a lab, there is where you can pick up these skills. So most of us did not come into neuroscience knowing any of this. All right, so you pick these skills up on the go.
Also, if you don't mind, could you tell us what labs you work in and what you work on?
Sure.
Because like you've been referring to your labs,
Oh, I
and
see.
it's a little Yeah.
confusing, right? So, Sagrika is from the Cognition and Emotion Lab at Center for Neuroscience. The Sanjay Bharti and myself, we are from Cognition Lab, or also known as Cognition, Computation and Behavioral Lab at CNS, that is Center for Neuroscience.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
So I have an input. So people who deal with anxiety, panic attack, and like chronic depression, etc., have a history of being exposed to like violence or different situations that put them through that, right? So why are they deemed mentally unhealthy as per the rules or regulations that you're presented with? I mean, it's not really. Uh, it's more of like uh, acquired and induced, and not. Um, from birth, if that makes sense.
Hmm. So, but they are affecting your mental health, though, right? So, I don't think you call it a disease per se.
Yeah,
Yeah, and these are more, they come into more slightly more disorder area. And even so, you're right in the sense that they, especially in childhood, is when they have, there is documentation, enough documentation to show that that can lead to some of these in later stages of life.
exactly.
And it's
Yeah,
not really so. It's what is normal, right, and what is healthy. So
exactly.
that's a very tricky thing to do. But when you're looking at a population as a whole, when you're seeing something that is deviating by a certain amount from that supposedly apparently normal population, is when you kind of deem it to be a cause for, say, concern or intervention. And so that's why these diagnoses are not made randomly. These are diagnoses that are made after a battery of evaluations. Now, these could be subjective or objective evaluations. So, it's only after that do you give a diagnosis, because there is a baseline level of anxiety all of us face. There's a baseline level
Yeah.
of stress all of us face, or all of that. So it's really about when you're deviating by a certain amount from that apparently normal, is when uh, it's thought of as okay, requiring intervention.
So could it also be that, I mean, during the course of the experiment, there could be certain triggers that might, aggravate those, in quotes, disorders, and
So
that's why we kind of keep it separate?
that is true, and a history of neurological disorders or psychiatric disorders can actually affect something at a deeper level also, right? So you're right, but we have a very strict exclusion criteria. In general, we have some exclusion criteria before we recruit participants.
So what would that be?
Something like, okay, you wouldn't want your subjects to currently be on medication, because that can again lead to some differences, or have a history of neurological disorders, be of a
Yeah,
certain
sure.
age, that uh,
Yeah, okay.
and there is also, like, there are also like plastic changes, neuroplastic changes that are happening continuously, so you can at least control for some of those.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And right, so any other questions, any other queries regarding, I think Rashi was here, but I don't see her here. um, Anyway, you can all contact us even offline if you have doubts with MATLAB and Psych Toolbox and running your tasks on remote access. Yeah. Sanjay, shall we tell them about Monday to
Yeah.
Thursday? Okay, guys. Now,
Yes.
since yes, somebody spoke up.
Okay. Hello, Priyanka, Sanjit.
Huh? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
dear.
Yeah, it would be nice if you can tell like that for the coming practical, how it will be, just like how we are planning to just conduct the practical, like explanation was and followed by the internship. You can explain the. In,
Yeah, sure, sure.
Right. So, we would like you to. So now, even if you had not gone through the introductory lecture, we have sort of recap. We've done a recap for you here. There are 6 behavioral tasks that are part of your assignment, and we have put up very short, very small demo videos for you on the website. So please go through all of those. Once you have gone through all of those and you have MATLAB and PsycToolbox installed, please uh, complete doing those 6 tasks before your lab session. That will be ideal. If you are having any issues with MATLAB and PsycToolbox, please feel free to book slots on the laptops that we have given, and we have shared the spreadsheet with you. Uh, there are enough and many slots, and this shouldn't take more than an hour for you to complete. So please go ahead and book your slots there and access those laptops through remote access. They already have MATLAB and PsycToolbox installed. And some of you, I'm not sure if I see everybody here, but some of you have already been doing it, and talking to us if they've been facing issues and otherwise. So go ahead and complete those tasks from for Monday to Thursday in a group wise manner. I believe the session is from 2 to 5. From 4 to 5 we will conduct a quiz. um, this is going to be a fairly simple quiz, right? Multiple choice questions primarily. So definitely be there for your group days quiz. In just in case you're not able to make it for that particular day's quiz, your designated day, we will have some provision to take you in for the next day. But please try to complete it on uh, so you complete your tasks and be present for your quiz, which is going to be held 4 to 5. Yes, that is true. It is so 4 to 5. I mean, it shouldn't take. These are really simple quizzes. Don't worry about the time, all right? So you'll get enough and more time. Yeah, even if it takes you a little bit longer because of some internet issues or whatever, we'll take that into consideration. But please be there by 4 o'clock.
Also, Rashi wanted me to tell you that she left the call and the issue got fixed. She forgot to inform you. Sorry
Cool,
about that.
yay. No, that's okay, as long as her issue is fixed. Right. So have many or most of you, I guess. Okay, there are very few participants anymore right now. Okay, cool. So I'm hoping most of you have been able to install, and if not, again, just put it up on your class group or whatever, and book your slots and be done with it. It'll be good for you. They're very simple tasks. They don't take very long or um, much effort in the sense of they're not very cognitively demanding. So just be it'll be good for you to be done with them. The assignment is really, you'll get a set of plots for each of the tasks that you do. Put them into your assignment and interpret them, comment on them. What did you understand from them? What did you not? Just just that could form part of your assignment per se, and that is to be submitted 1 week from your what your lab day. Is that clear? Yeah, there are 10 of
Yeah,
you.
and also,
Yeah.
what exactly are we doing from 2 to 4 on the lab day?
Good question, Sanjay.
So if you have already performed the task, I don't think there's anything left for you to do from 2 to 4, and you can directly join from 4. No other work required.
Okay, thank you.
But
Yeah.
we can definitely answer questions pertaining to the tasks, right? Okay. Um,
Yeah, if you have
the,
some questions, come before 4.
Cool. So if there are no other questions, Jean? Jean, Deepthi, shall we then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Thanks for joining the session. A wonderful session. We had a wonderful session. Thanks for the active participation from the students also.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you so much.
we
That
can
was
wind up.
really fun.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
All
So
right.
we can wind up the session. We'll see you on Monday. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Bye
Thank you.
bye. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.